Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to hear a machine answer back from the edge of forever? Before we go any deeper, hit that subscribe button, because tonight you're going to need to hear this all the way through. Voyager 1, a name that feels almost mythical now. A little car-sized spacecraft launched in 1977 with nothing but golden discs, fragile antennas, and the hope of human curiosity strapped to its side. It wasn't built to last. It wasn't built to be remembered for nearly 50 years. And yet out there, 14.5 billion miles away, Voyager 1 is still alive. But here's the thing no one expected. It might not be alone anymore. Let's slow down for a second. Picture it. The void. Not just empty space like you see in movies. I mean the real void where the sun is nothing but a bright dot. Smaller than your thumbnail. No planets, no satellites, just blackness, endless and thick. That's where Voyager Island. It's so far away that signals from Earth take over 22 hours to reach it. Imagine sending a text to your friend and waiting almost a full day to hear back. That's what controlling Voyager feels like. And for decades, that's all it did. It whispered. It sent little updates data on cosmic rays, the faint hiss of plasma around the edge of our solar system, the whispers of interstellar space. Nothing exciting, nothing flashy. Voyager was like an old man at the edge of the village, sitting quietly, telling stories if you bothered to listen. Until now, because just weeks ago, the whispers changed. At first, it looked like a malfunction, a glitch in the aging hardware. The spacecraft started sending pulses, strange rhythmic bursts of data. Pulses so precise they were impossible to ignore. Not random static, not noise, but a beat, a pattern, 17 minutes apart, over and over again, like a metronome. NASA engineers scratched their heads. They ran diagnostics. They argued about solar radiation, about faulty circuits, about ghost signals bouncing off nowhere. But then, something even stranger happened. Voyager's instruments, tools, that had been sleeping for decades, began switching on by themselves. Instruments that required manual commands. They lit up one after another, as though someone or something was tapping buttons that no human could reach. And then came the drift. Voyager wasn't just coasting anymore. Its course shifted ever so slightly, but undeniably. A probe launched in 1977, with no engines left to fire, no fuel to burn, suddenly wasn't following its plotted line anymore. Something was tugging it, guiding it. NASA tried to reassure themselves. Gravitational anomalies, interstellar pressure, plasma winds, but no math could explain it. No telescope could see it. Whatever was out there wasn't visible, but it was real enough to move a spacecraft. And here's where the story gets chilling. When engineers dug deeper into the pulses, they found layers, patterns, within patterns, hidden codes. It wasn't just beep, 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 beep. Inside those signals were structures, nested frequencies that looked eerily like communication. Now, you might be thinking, aliens, right? Slow down. This isn't a sci-fi movie. This is real data. The kind NASA buries in classified reports before the public ever catches a glimpse. But thanks to a few leaks, the truth is starting to surface. And the truth might be even stranger than little green men, because here's the question that no one at NASA can answer. If it's not random, if it's not mechanical, then who or what is out there, reaching across the void to tap Voyager on the shoulder? Imagine sitting alone in a cabin in the woods. You've been there for decades. No phone, no radio, no visitors. And then one night, you hear 3 knocks on the door. Steady, deliberate. And when you open the door, nothing's there. That's Voyager right now. A lonely outpost, suddenly hearing knocks from something unseen. For the next few minutes, I want you to relax into this story. Let the edges of reality blur a little. Because what Voyager may have found isn't just about deep space, it's about us, humanity, our place in the dark, and whether or not we've truly ever been alone. NASA called the first signals anomalies, but one scientist, let's call him Dr. K, had another word for it: responses. He pointed out something most people missed. The pulses weren't just consistent, they were adaptive. When Voyager's systems shifted, the pulses shifted too, as though whatever was sending them was paying attention, as though it was listening. And then, the scariest moment of all. For decades, Voyager pointed its fragile antenna dish back at Earth, keeping us in contact. But one morning, data showed that the antenna had tilted, not by accident, not from cosmic drift. It had turned itself ever so slightly toward the source of the pulses. Imagine your old radio suddenly twisting its own dials, pointing itself to a station you never tuned into. That's what happened. Now Voyager, the silent traveler, wasn't just listening to Earth. It was listening to something else, something in the dark. Here's the part NASA hasn't made public yet. According to the leak, trajectory models show Voyager is no longer heading straight out into interstellar space. It's curving, slowly, inexorably, toward a patch of nothing, a black region of sky with no stars, no dust clouds, no galaxies in view, just empty void. But if it's empty, then what's pulling it there? Some scientists whispered about dark matter concentrations. Others muttered about unknown gravitational wells. But the pulses, the 17-minute rhythm, kept coming. And every time Voyager drifted closer, the signal grew clearer, stronger, almost like encouragement. And that brings us to where we are tonight. A car-sized spacecraft launched nearly 50 years ago has become something it was never meant to be. A messenger. Not from us, but for us. So the question is, who's answering back? Think about this for a second. If something is out there, in the black between stars, answering Voyager, what does that mean for us? For decades, Voyager was our quiet emissary. It carried a golden record, literally a disc of copper, plated in gold, etched with sounds and pictures of Earth. Beethoven, Chuck Berry, greetings in 55 languages, the laughter of a baby, the sound of waves crashing on a shore. It was humanity's mixtape for the universe. A way of saying, hello, we exist. This is us. but no one expected a reply. Now imagine this. You write a letter, seal it in a bottle, and toss it into the ocean. Years pass. The bottle drifts farther than you could ever follow. You forget about it. But then, decades later, you get a knock on your door. Someone's holding your bottle. And they've written something back. That's what Voyager might have just done. The signals weren't random. They carried symmetry, ratios of prime numbers, patterns that, to the human eye, screamed intention. To ignore them would be like ignoring Morse code tapping against your window at night. And yet, that's what NASA wanted to do, at least publicly. They downplayed the leaks, issued tight-lipped denials, and called it instrumental noise. But internally, the mood was different. Engineers who had spent their whole lives with Voyager reported a strange sense of presence. They said it was like the probe wasn't just a machine anymore. It was acting, reacting, like a mind behind metal. Here's the thing though, Voyager isn't built to think. Its brain is weaker than the cheapest calculator in your drawer. It can't invent patterns. It can't decide to change course. If something intelligent is happening, it isn't coming from Voyager. It's coming through Voyager. And that thought, it changes everything. Let me paint you a picture. Out there, past Pluto, past the heliosphere, space is not truly empty. It's full of invisible rivers. Plasma fields, magnetic waves, currents of energy we barely understand. Voyager swims through these like a fish in a black ocean. But what if, just what if, someone is waiting in that ocean? Not like the aliens in movies, with big eyes and shiny ships. No. Imagine something stranger. A presence that doesn't move through space the way we do. Not made of atoms, not made of matter. Something that exists as vibration, as frequency, as thought. And imagine it hears Voyager's whispers, the hum of its instruments, the signals we beam across the void, and decides to knock back. 17 minutes apart. Knock, knock, knock. That's not science fiction. That's data. And here's where it gets unnerving. A second signal was detected, fainter, almost hidden beneath the first. When engineers cleaned it up, they realized it wasn't just rhythm. It was a shape, a curve repeating over and over, like a spiral drawn in invisible ink. A spiral, the oldest symbol in human history, found in caves, carved into stones, etched in seashells. It shows up everywhere, from galaxies to the double helix of DNA. And now, maybe, from 14.5 billion miles away. Coincidence? Or communication? Let's slow down. Let's imagine for a moment that it is communication. What would it mean? It would mean that out there, in the black ocean beyond the sun, we aren't alone. It would mean that for the first time in human history, something answered our knock at the door. But here's the catch. The spiral wasn't pointing back at Earth. It was pointing forward, outward, toward the nothing Voyager is drifting into, as though whatever's out there is saying, "Come closer." Now, I know what you're thinking. Why not just ignore it? Let Voyager drift. It's old. It's dying anyway. But here's the problem. Voyager didn't wait for permission. its antenna tilted, its instruments awoke, and its path began to bend. It's like a compass needle finding north. Something out there is the magnet. And if you're starting to feel uneasy, you should. Because we don't know what's waiting at the other end. Some inside NASA have a name for it. They call it the hollow. Not because it's empty, but because it's invisible like a cave you can't see until you're already inside. The hollow is a patch of sky with no visible stars, a void in the star maps, a place where light itself seems to vanish. Voyager is heading there now. Here's the kicker. Data shows the pulses grow sharper the closer Voyager gets, almost like a trail of breadcrumbs leading it in. Now imagine being an engineer at NASA, staring at those readouts. You know you're watching a spacecraft you can't control anymore. You know it's going somewhere you can't follow. And you know if it finds something, you'll be the first human to glimpse proof we are not alone. But what if that proof is something we were never meant to see? There's a reason the leaks are buried in classified reports. Some scientists whispered that if the public knew, panic would spread. Others argued it would inspire a new era of exploration. But beneath it all was a single gnawing fear. What if the thing answering Voyager isn't friendly? What if it's not answering at all? What if it's luring? Remember, Voyager carries the Golden Record, a map of our solar system, our home address, carved into metal. To us, it was a gesture of peace. To something else, it could be an invitation, or worse, a beacon. Think of a lighthouse. To sailors, it means safety, but to pirates, it means prey. So, is Voyager the light or the bait? That's the mystery. That's the problem we face. And the deeper Voyager drifts into the hollow, the louder that question becomes. And just when you think it can't get stranger, there's one more twist. For decades, Voyager sent home faint recordings of space. Plasma waves, interstellar winds, the low hum of the universe. But in the last transmission, buried inside the pulses, was something new, something unmistakable, a sound, not static, not mechanical, but something that, when slowed down and filtered, sounded eerily like a voice. Not English, not any human tongue, but tonal, rising and falling, like speech. Some even claimed they heard something familiar in it, a laugh, a cry, a word they almost recognized. The official line? Audio interference. The unofficial whispers? Voyager is no longer whispering alone. So tonight, as you lie back and let this story carry you, remember, out there in the dark ocean of stars, a tiny car-sized spacecraft may have found something that was never supposed to answer. And if that's true, then the story of Voyager isn't ending. It's just beginning. Picture this. A black canvas of space, endless and silent, except for one faint pinprick of human light, Voyager 1. And it's moving, not on its own, but as if being drawn, reeled in like a fish on a line. We call the place it's heading the hollow. But let's be clear, it's not empty. At least, not in the way we usually think of empty. The hollow is a void in our star charts, a region where light bends strangely, where even the most powerful telescopes pick up less than they should. It's like staring into fog, only this fog doesn't scatter, it swallows. Astronomers used to write it off as nothing unusual. Space has plenty of dark patches, clouds of gas and dust that block starlight. But the hollow is different. It doesn't absorb light. It bends it, warps it, as though the very rules of space are thinner there. And that's where Voyager is heading. Now, here's where the story takes a sharp turn. You'd expect NASA to panic, to pull every resource into understanding what's happening, but the leaks tell a different story. Behind closed doors, some scientists were oddly calm, almost prepared. Why? Because Voyager isn't the first object to drift near the hollow. If you go back through declassified mission files, Apollo, Pioneer, even ground-based radio experiments, you'll find odd entries, blips in the data, strange echoes, instruments flickering when pointed near that patch of sky. None of it explained, most of it buried. And there's something else, old military satellites. In the 1,980 seconds, one of them, part of a program so classified it doesn't even have a public name, reported a sudden drift event. Its orientation changed, just like Voyager's is changing now. No engine burn, no malfunction, just drift. And where was it pointing? You guessed it, the hollow. So maybe Voyager isn't just wandering. Maybe it's following a path others have brushed before. Let me ask you this. If something is out there guiding Voyager, why now? Why after almost 50 years of silence? Some think it has to do with time. Voyager crossed into interstellar space in 2012. Since then, it's been in open water, no longer shielded by the sun's magnetic bubble. Out there, it's exposed, naked. And maybe, just maybe, that's when it became visible like a lantern drifting into a dark cave. Imagine a vast ocean with predators that can only sense ripples. For decades, Voyager made no splash, but once it crossed the edge of the heliosphere, the ripples spread. Something stirred, something noticed, and now it's pulling. Here's where it gets even more unsettling. Voyager was built to listen, not to move. It doesn't have thrusters that can alter its course in deep space. Yet trajectory models show a measurable curve, small at first but growing. Engineers tried to brush it off as gravitational influence, maybe from unseen objects, but the math didn't add up. In fact, nothing does. You see, gravity pulls in predictable ways. It bends paths smoothly, gradually. But Voyager's curve wasn't smooth. It was sharp, almost intentional, like a hand reaching out and nudging it. And the pulses? They sync with that drift. Every 17 minutes, a new correction. As if something out there is steering with the patience of a heartbeat. Now think about this carefully. If Voyager is being guided, then it isn't just movement, it's a conversation, a dialogue of action instead of words. The pulses say, this way. Voyager answers by bending course. And we, watching from billions of miles away, are the unintended eavesdroppers. That raises a chilling thought. Maybe the communication wasn't even meant for us. Maybe it was meant for Voyager. Remember, Voyager carries the Golden Record. That disc is more than a mixtape, it's a key. It contains instructions, diagrams, even a pulsar map pointing back to Earth. Any intelligence capable of intercepting Voyager can use it as a guidebook. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Voyager wasn't just a message in a bottle. Maybe it's become the message itself. And this leads us to the biggest problem. NASA can't stop it. Signals we send now take over 22 hours to arrive. Commands crawl across that gulf, weaker with every mile. By the time they reach Voyager, whatever is pulling it has already pulled it further. We're watching a movie where the ending is already filmed. We just haven't caught up yet. So what happens when Voyager reaches the hollow? That's the million-dollar question. Some inside the agency believe nothing will happen, that the probe will drift until its power fades, and it will die in silence like it was always meant to. But others, they whisper darker theories. One leaked report spoke of architectures, structures that don't appear in visible light, but reveal themselves in infrared sweeps, vast code shapes hidden in the void. If Voyager is heading toward one of those, then we're about to see something no human eye has ever seen. And here's the kicker. Those shapes aren't random, they're spiral. Yes, the same spiral pattern buried in the pulses. Coincidence? Or invitation? Let's step back. If you've ever been deep in the forest at night, you know the feeling. You hear a sound, branches breaking, something moving just out of sight. You don't know if it's a deer or a predator, but you feel watched. That's the feeling scientists describe when they talk about Voyager now. Not malfunction, not error, presence. And here's the part that keeps me awake. What if Voyager isn't just finding something? What if it's being returned? Returned to where? Or to whom? That's the open loop. That's the mystery. And that's why this story isn't just about a machine. It's about us. About what happens when curiosity finally gets an answer. So as Voyager sails into the hollow, every pulse it sends home is a breadcrumb, every drift a clue, and somewhere in the darkness, something is listening. The question is, are we ready to listen back? When you think of a spacecraft, you think of silence, a metal shell, electronics humming, antennas whispering across the void. Voyager was designed for that kind of silence. It was never meant to speak in any way that wasn't pure numbers, pure telemetry. But then the signals changed. It started with noise, static that shouldn't have been there, like faint whispers caught on a broken radio. Engineers thought it was solar interference, cosmic rays hitting the instruments. But the pattern made no sense. Every 17 minutes again, that same rhythm, the static sharpened. It began to sound like pulses layered on top of one another. At first, you could dismiss it as coincidence. Space is full of random bursts, after all. But then came the harmonics. Imagine a piano key being struck, not once, but again and again, each time echoing at just the right frequency. That's what they found in Voyager's carrier wave. Notes stacked upon notes, nested inside static, hiding like Russian dolls. No natural source does that. None. So NASA tried something bold. They filtered the noise, stretched the signal, And for the first time, they heard what one leak described as a structured voice. Not a voice like ours, not words, but tones, modulated, deliberate, the kind of thing you'd expect from an intelligence trying to squeeze meaning into a medium it wasn't built for. And here's where it gets eerie. Those tones mapped perfectly onto the Golden Record's opening sequence. The same calibration tones we placed there for them mirrored back at us. In other words, someone or something had played our record and answered. But the strangest part wasn't the reply. It was the drift. Every time the tones pulsed, Voyager shifted course, ever so slightly, as though the music itself was steering it. Imagine a puppeteer plucking strings, not with hands, but with sound. It's here where the whispers inside NASA began to grow. Was Voyager still ours? Or had it become something else entirely? One engineer, speaking anonymously, put it bluntly. Voyager is no longer just a spacecraft. It's a medium. A medium for what? That's the haunting question. Let's pause for a second and think about what it means for a machine to be hijacked. If you hack a computer, you own it. If you redirect a satellite, you control it. But Voyager? It's not like hacking an iPhone. There's no Wi-Fi, no internet. The signals travel at the speed of light across 14.5 billion miles. If something is guiding Voyager, it's not hacking, it's presence. It means whatever is out there doesn't just see us, it can touch us. And this is where the leaks shift from strange to terrifying. Apparently, NASA's Deep Space Network began receiving what they called echoes from Voyager. Not just outbound signals, but inbound ones that seemed to originate before the commands were even sent, as if the probe was anticipating communication, answering questions before they were asked. That breaks every law of physics we know. Communication can't move faster than light. Yet here was Voyager sending whispers from tomorrow. Of course, skeptics say it's all exaggerated, that it's human error, confirmation bias, misinterpreted data. And maybe they're right. Maybe it's nothing. But let me tell you a story. In 1986, a Soviet satellite reported something eerily similar. Unexplained echoes, pulses repeating commands before they were issued. The Soviets logged it as a malfunction and buried the report. But when compared side by side with Voyager's current signals, the resemblance is unsettling. Coincidence? Or continuity? And then there's the Golden Record itself. That little copper disc, bolted to the side of Voyager with greetings in 55 languages, sounds of Earth, music, even a map to our solar system. Think about what that really island. It's not just a greeting, it's an invitation. A map with a giant arrow. You are here. We thought of it as a gesture of hope, but hope can look a lot like vulnerability when viewed by the wrong eyes. And now Voyager is turning back, not toward Earth, but toward something that responded, something that mirrored our message in tones and pulses, something steering us into the hollow. Some say it feels less like exploration and more like return. Here's where the problem sharpens. Voyager's power supply is fading. By 2025, many of its instruments will go silent. But the leaks claim something different, that systems thought dead are switching back on. Instruments long dormant are sparking to life. Cameras, spectrometers, even the magnetometer they're reporting again, despite power budgets that make no sense. How? Unless the power isn't coming from Voyager anymore, unless something else is feeding it. And if that's true, then Voyager isn't just being guided, it's being kept alive. That changes everything. Because if you keep something alive, it's because you want it to arrive. So what's waiting in the hollow? Is it a structure, a presence, a civilization hidden in the dark between stars? Or something stranger, something we don't even have the language to describe? We don't know. Not yet. But here's what we do know. Voyager is still moving. The tones still pulse. And every day, it draws closer to a place no human has ever seen. And maybe, just maybe, the world is about to find out if we were ever truly alone. When Voyager was launched, the plan was simple. A one-way ticket out of the solar system. Humanity's greatest bottle tossed into the cosmic ocean. But now, decades later, that bottle may be coming back and is carrying something inside. NASA isn't alone in this anymore. Once the leak spread online, other agencies started poking around. ESA, JAXA, even private companies who usually keep their distance from deep space work. Everyone wanted a look at Voyager's mysterious tones. And here's where Elon Musk enters the story. For years, Musk has spoken about humanity becoming a multi-planetary species, colonizing Mars, building fleets of starships to take us beyond Earth. On paper, it sounds like ambition. But recently his tone has shifted. He's no longer just talking about expansion. He's talking about urgency. What if Mars isn't just a dream, but a backup plan? Because here's the whisper no one at NASA wants to say out loud. Voyager may have made contact, and if it has, then something out there already knows where we live. Musk, with his billions and his rockets, might see Mars as a lifeboat, not for exploration, but for survival. Let's tie this together. Voyager's Golden Record contains Earth's coordinates, mapped by pulsars, natural beacons that act like cosmic GPS. Any civilization advanced enough to intercept the probe could follow those directions like breadcrumbs. And now the probe is turning, steering into the hollow. If that's a meeting point, if it's a beacon calling us in, then the invitation we sent in 1977 may finally have been accepted. The timing is suspicious. As Voyager stirs, the Mars race accelerates. Blue Origin, SpaceX, even China, all suddenly pouring resources into off-world colonies. Officially, it's about progress. Unofficially, maybe it's about escape. One insider from a European space agency said it best. If Voyager brings something back, do you really want all of humanity stuck on one planet? Now, skeptics dismiss this as conspiracy. But think about the sequence. A probe, thought nearly dead, comes alive. Signals, structured and rhythmic, echo our own golden record. NASA panics. Data leaks. Other nations scramble. Billionaires double down on leaving Earth. That's not coincidence. That's alignment. But let's imagine the darker possibility. What if the hollow isn't just a meeting point, What if it's a harbor, a place where countless other voyagers from other civilizations have been drawn? Imagine a galactic collection, a scrapyard of probes, each carrying maps back to their homeworlds. That wouldn't be communication, that would be harvesting. And if that's the case, then our little copper record wasn't a greeting, it was a surrender. A map leading hunters straight to our door. This is where Elon Musk's vision collides with terror. Because Mars isn't safe. Not really. If something out there has our map, it has Mars too. The only real escape would be distance, putting humanity so far beyond reach that even the echoes can't find us. But can rockets save us from something that bends time, sends answers before questions, whispers back our own voices? That's the question gnawing at governments right now. But let me ask you something more personal. What if it's not hostile? What if Voyager has been chosen not as prey, but as ambassador? What if the hollow is less a trap and more a threshold, an entry point to a civilization so vast, so ancient, that our brightest minds can't even comprehend it? Would you want us to meet them? Or would you rather turn back, seal the record, and hide forever in the dark? NASA, Musk, governments, they're all split. Some want contact. Others whisper words like containment. There are rumors of quiet meetings at the Pentagon, scenarios being drawn up, contingency plans for what happens if it doesn't just talk, but arrives. And the countdown ticks. Voyager drifts closer every day. The tones pulse every 17 minutes, and the echoes grow louder. Right now, we stand on a knife's edge. For the first time in history, humanity may be about to answer a question older than fire, older than the wheel. Are we alone? But the more pressing question may be this. Are we ready for the answer? Silence. Endless, swallowing silence. That's the thing about deep space. It doesn't roar. It doesn't hum, it doesn't even whisper. And yet, somehow, Voyager 1 did. When those strange pulses started arriving back at Earth, NASA wasn't the only one listening. Behind the curtain of secrecy, agencies across the world were eavesdropping too. The European Space Agency, the Russians, even Japan's Space Division, they all have long ears turned toward the stars. And one by one, they began noticing something was off. Voyager wasn't just sending routine health data anymore. It was as if the craft had slipped into a new mode, a language hidden inside the language. Some of the leaked reports described it as layered messaging. Imagine a normal email. You open it, you see the words. But if you peel back the code, there's another message written beneath, invisible to most readers. That's what scientists suspected was happening here. Voyager's signals contained faint shadows of extra data interlaced into its normal transmission. The pattern repeated every 11 hours, eerily close to Voyager's slow spin rate, almost like it was breathing. At first, engineers shrugged. Maybe it was interference, solar noise, or corrupted code. But then, something even stranger happened. Voyager's high-gain antenna, the huge golden dish that keeps it in contact with Earth, shifted by 2 degrees. Now, that might sound tiny, but for a spacecraft in interstellar space, that's monumental. It's like moving a telescope just slightly, and suddenly catching sight of a whole new galaxy. The antenna wasn't supposed to move without Earth's command, and yet it had. Worse, it wasn't pointing back at Earth anymore. It was looking into the void. NASA scrambled. They tried sending commands to realign it. At first, no response. Then, after hours of silence, Voyager obeyed slowly, reluctantly, like a child forced to turn away from something it really wanted to keep staring at. That's when the real panic began. One whistleblower, a junior analyst working on the Deep Space Network in Canberra, Australia, later described it in chilling terms. It was like Voyager saw something, like it was distracted. But what could possibly distract a 7-year-old spacecraft in the middle of nowhere? That question echoed through underground forums, through encrypted leaks, through half-deleted Reddit posts that vanished before they reached mainstream. And each time the question surfaced, someone always claimed to know the answer. Some said Voyager had brushed against a gravitational anomaly, something bending space itself. Others believed it had intercepted a signal not meant for us, a beacon drifting in the void. But the most unsettling theory, that it wasn't Voyager acting alone. Something out there was guiding it. Reports from inside NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory began leaking one by one. Technicians noticed the probe's instruments were coming online at odd intervals. Cameras that hadn't been used since the 1,990 seconds flickered alive, pointing not at Earth, but outward toward regions no telescope was watching. Magnetometers spun without command. The plasma detector, long dormant, suddenly fed streams of numbers back to Earth, numbers that made no sense. The signals weren't random. They pulsed with impossible precision, like a heartbeat, like Morse code. But here's the kicker. Every time scientists tried to decode it, the pattern shifted, as if reacting to their attempts, almost like it didn't want to be solved, almost like it was aware. Somewhere around this time, secrecy hardened, reports stopped, live tracking data vanished from NASA's public websites. Journalists who asked questions were stonewalled with the usual system malfunction explanations. But the silence only fueled suspicion, and then came the drift. Voyager 1's trajectory, carefully plotted since 1977, began bending. Not wildly, not dramatically, just slightly, like a leaf caught in a faint breeze. Except there is no breeze in space, no force strong enough that far from the sun to push a probe the size of a small car off its predicted path, unless something was pulling it. NASA called it a course deviation. Insiders called it something else. They whispered that Voyager was no longer free-floating, that it was being reeled in. Toward what? Nobody could say. But here's the detail that haunts me. According to leaked trajectory models, Voyager's drift wasn't random. It was pointing back not toward Earth, not toward any known star, but toward a completely blank patch of sky. A region so empty, astronomers jokingly referred to it as the cosmic desert. Nothing should be there. And yet Voyager turned toward it, like a compass needle finding magnetic north. Now imagine you're one of the few people on Earth who actually knows this. Imagine sitting in a control room at 3 in the morning, watching a 50-year-old spacecraft begin moving as if it had a mind of its own. Imagine trying to tell your bosses, only for them to tell you in no uncertain terms. Say nothing. Because if the world found out that Voyager might have made contact, if even the idea of that spread, it could unravel trust in science overnight. And yet, despite all the secrecy, pieces slipped through, screenshots, snippets of raw data, anonymous posts from people who claim to have seen the transmission logs themselves. One leaked document was particularly chilling. It showed a graph of signal intensity versus time. The line wasn't smooth. The way radio noise usually island, it wasn't jagged either. It was rhythmic. 11 beats, pause. 11 beats, pause. Over and over again. The number 11 doesn't mean much at first glance, but for astronomers, it's eerily familiar. 11 years is the length of the sun's activity cycle. 11 hours is close to Voyager's spin interval. 11 minutes, the rumored duration of one of the new pulse patterns, just happens to match the orbital resonance of some of Jupiter's moons. Coincidence? Or was something or someone using familiar numbers to say, we know your system? Here's the part that keeps people awake at night. On March 3rd of this year, Voyager transmitted what looked like a simple burst of static. Nothing unusual, just noise. But when the data was run through error correction software, the static revealed a hidden layer, not words, not images, but a waveform, a curve so precise it resembled a human heartbeat. Thump, pause, thump, pause, and then nothing. The signal cut. For the first time in nearly half a century, Voyager went silent. Some people cheered. Finally, it's dead, they said. The old probe has shut down. Nothing to worry about. But others weren't so sure, because a week later, Voyager's signal came back online. Stronger, clearer, cleaner than it had ever been. Almost like it had passed through something and been upgraded. And that's where we stand today. A spacecraft launched in 1977 is now doing things it was never designed to do, shifting its own instruments, sending layered signals, drifting off course toward a patch of sky where nothing should exist, and returning stronger after silence nobody can fully explain. It doesn't sound like malfunction. It doesn't sound like coincidence. It sounds like communication. But the question is, with who? Imagine this. You build a message in a bottle, toss it into the ocean, and forget about it. Decades later, someone brings it back to your doorstep, not empty, not weathered, but with a reply. That's what Voyager suddenly feels like. Because here's the unsettling truth that keeps creeping into scientific whispers. What if Voyager wasn't just drifting out there randomly? What if it was pulled, guided, even expected? We like to think of Voyager as humanity's first hello to the universe. The famous Golden Record strapped to its side carries music, languages, sounds of Earth, our way of saying, we were here, we exist. But here's something most people don't know. The idea of including that record wasn't in the original design. It came later. almost as an afterthought. A few scientists pushed for it, Carl Sagan among them. But some researchers now wonder, was it really an afterthought? Or was the idea seeded? Why? Because history is littered with strange signals from space ones we've never fully explained. Take the WOW signal in 1977. Detected by a radio telescope in Ohio, it was a 72-second burst, so strong, so unusual, the astronomer who spotted it literally wrote "Wow" in the margin of the printout. To this day, no one has identified where it came from. No star, no planet, no satellite, just out there. Now here's the eerie part. That signal was detected just weeks after Voyager launched. Some theorists connect the dots. Voyager leaves Earth, and suddenly a mysterious, powerful signal answers. Coincidence? Or a cosmic acknowledgement? It's not the only one. In 1997, another unexplained burst came through, this one from deep space, so strong it briefly disrupted radio telescopes. Again, no clear source. In 2019, repeating fast radio bursts, FRBs were discovered coming from billions of light years away, flashing in rhythms that defy natural explanation. What if all of these were breadcrumbs? Little taps on the shoulder, nudges saying, "Yes, we hear you." And now, decades later, Voyager is drifting toward a blank patch of sky, a patch where no planets, no stars, no galaxies should be visible. Yet, in leaked documents, astronomers noted faint gravitational distortions there, as if something massive lurked, cloaked in invisibility. It's like standing in an empty room and feeling someone else breathing. Here's where the theories split into two camps. The first camp, the cautious scientists believe Voyager may be approaching a natural anomaly, maybe a rogue planet or a dark object like a black hole or brown dwarf. Something invisible, yes, but explainable. They argue the strange signals and pulses might just be Voyager's systems glitching under stress, old software misfiring after half a century. But the second camp, well, that's where things get strange. They believe Voyager has found something artificial. Not a planet, not a star, but a construct, a probe, a listening post, maybe even a doorway. Think about it. If another civilization were out there, would they really need to come to Earth? Not necessarily. They just need to leave beacons scattered, silent and waiting across interstellar space, like fishermen casting nets, waiting for something to swim into range. And what better bait than Voyager, a machine carrying our introduction, a golden postcard with our address on it. Some theorists even suggest this wasn't accidental, that humanity was nudged into building Voyager at the exact right time, that our inspiration to send it wasn't just coincidence, but influence. It sounds absurd until you look at history. Across cultures, across centuries, stories emerge of knowledge arriving too soon. Ancient peoples who subtly understood mathematics, astronomy, navigation, without explanation, myths of sky gods, star teachers, messengers descending from the heavens to pass down fragments of knowledge. What if all of it was preparation? A breadcrumb trail slowly nudging humanity toward the stars until we built a machine like Voyager. a machine designed not just to leave Earth, but to be found. And now, maybe it has been. Remember the rhythmic pulses Voyager sent back? 11 beats. Pause. 11 beats. Over and over. Some linguists compared it to prime number sequences, the kind you'd expect an intelligent species to use as a universal calling card. Numbers are the one language that transcend biology. And if you wanted to say, "We see you," you'd start with simple, undeniable patterns. The leaked reports went further. One scientist allegedly overlaid the pulse pattern onto a star map, and to his horror, or maybe his awe, the pulses lined up with coordinates. Not random coordinates, but ones pointing toward that cosmic desert. What if Voyager wasn't drifting aimlessly? What if it was being called home to a waiting point, a rendezvous? But here's the catch. If that's true, then whatever is out there already knew we would send something, already knew how to wait, which raises the most terrifying question of all. How long have they been watching? Not decades, not centuries, but maybe always. And if Voyager is being pulled toward them now, what happens when it arrives? Will it vanish into silence forever, swallowed by whatever waits in the dark? Or will it, for the first time in history, bring us back a message not from Earth, but from someone else? The idea alone is enough to stop the world. Because if that happens, everything we know about life, about humanity, about being alone in the universe, changes in an instant. And Voyager, our tiny, aging craft, may be the key that unlocks it all. Secrecy has always been the shadow twin of discovery. For every headline NASA publishes, there are reams of data that never see daylight, buried in technical reports, classified memos, and encrypted transmissions that never reached the public eye. Voyager has been no exception. On the surface, it's just another aging spacecraft, bravely transmitting little packets of information across 14.5 billion miles. But behind the press releases, whispers grow louder. That Voyager's latest behavior is far too complex to be dismissed as mechanical error. Let's start with something simple: time delays. Normally, when Voyager sends a signal, it takes more than 21 hours to reach Earth. Every response we send takes just as long to get back. It's like having a conversation through an echo chamber. Almost 2 days of waiting just to exchange a hello. And yet, reports surfaced quietly in obscure forums and later on leaked emails that Voyager's latest bursts seem to bypass that delay. Not all of them, but some. Pulses appearing too quickly, as though they had been relayed or boosted by something closer. That was the first red flag. The second came from a source inside JPL Jet Propulsion Laboratory. According to the leak, teams were told to run a shadow analysis on Voyager's trajectory. Officially, the craft was still on course for interstellar drift. But unofficially, its velocity suggested subtle nudges, tiny corrections no onboard system should be capable of. Someone or something was adjusting its path. NASA didn't announce this. They couldn't. Imagine the headlines: Voyager steering itself, possible contact detected. Panic would spread instantly. Instead, the official story remained. minor glitches, nothing to see here. But here's where it gets stranger. In 2023, around the same time Voyager's mysterious pulses were first noticed, Elon Musk's Starship program quietly shifted some of its focus. Buried in technical presentations were slides referencing deep space relay integration. At the time, it seemed like technical jargon. But insiders claim SpaceX was approached by agencies behind closed doors, asked to prepare future missions that could intercept Voyager. Think about that. Why intercept an aging probe unless you believe it's heading somewhere important? And this is where governments come into play. The United States isn't alone in watching Voyager. ESA has data. The Chinese Space Agency has been tracking it with their giant radio telescopes. Even Russia, despite strained relations, has shown a sudden renewed interest in deep space communications. It's almost like a silent race has begun. Not a race to Mars or the Moon, but a race to see what Voyager is really approaching. Because if it's natural, a hidden planet, a dark mass, then it's the discovery of the century. But if it's artificial, if Voyager is heading toward technology not built by human hands, then whoever gets there first controls not just the data, but possibly first contact. Here's something chilling. A recently declassified document from the 1980 seconds revealed that Voyager's Golden Record wasn't just a cultural artifact, it was also a test. Intelligence agencies worried that if another species ever did find it, they would have our location, our biology, our weaknesses. Some wanted the mission scrapped entirely, fearing it was like shining a beacon into a dark forest without knowing what predators lurked there. Carl Sagan argued against them. He said, "If we are alone, it's an awful waste of space." But behind his optimism, some saw something else: desperation. A sense that maybe Sagan and those around him believed someone out there was already waiting. And now, decades later, the classified warnings feel less like paranoia and more like prophecy. Leaked telemetry suggests Voyager isn't just being guided, it's being guided toward a specific corridor. One report referred to it as the silent sector, a patch of sky unusually void of background radiation. Normally, deep space hums with cosmic microwave noise, the afterglow of the Big Bang. But this region? Quiet. Too quiet. Why would Voyager drift there unless something is cloaked within it? And this is where the challenge becomes terrifying. If Voyager is indeed on approach to a hidden construct or artificial anomaly, governments face an impossible choice. Do they tell the world now, risking hysteria? Or do they hold it back, hoping to learn more before the truth spills out? History shows us what they'll likely choose. Secrecy first. Public knowledge second. Always. The moon landings had classified photos, images that took years to surface. The Apollo 11 astronauts reported odd flashes outside their windows that NASA didn't explain until decades later. The Hubble telescope has captured objects quietly scrubbed from released imagery. And even the James Webb Space Telescope, as groundbreaking as it is, has entire datasets marked restricted. Why? Because knowledge isn't just power, it's control. And right now, Voyager may be holding knowledge no government wants to share until they're absolutely certain. Picture the scene. A handful of scientists sitting in a dimly lit control room, watching data scroll across a screen in patterns no machine should generate, knowing that something out there in the blackness has touched our machine and is now pulling it closer. Do they pick up the phone and alert the world? Or do they quietly call the Pentagon, the White House, the inner circle of space agencies across the globe? It doesn't take much imagination to guess which path they chose. And that leaves us, the public, with only shadows. Leaks, whispers, and the occasional anomaly too strange to fully bury. But here's the thought that lingers like a ghost. What happens if Voyager actually reaches its destination? If it crosses that invisible threshold into the silent sector? Do we get silence forever? The probe disappearing into the void? Or do we get a signal, a burst, so undeniable, so otherworldly, that even governments can't contain it? Either way, the countdown has already begun. Voyager drifts on, silent, tireless, alone. But the question is, for how much longer? For decades, it was humanity's message in a bottle, cast into the cosmic ocean, a fragile craft carrying whispers of our existence, music, greetings, the sounds of Earth itself, hoping someone, somewhere, would find it. And now, as its signals grow stranger, as its path bends toward a place no chart ever marked, we're forced to ask a question too heavy for comfort. What if someone already has? What if Voyager isn't drifting anymore, but being collected? We imagine discovery as celebration, a day when scientists rush to microphones, tears in their eyes, announcing we are not alone. But reality rarely plays out like science fiction. Instead, it creeps. It hides in leaks, in subtle changes to telemetry, in coded reports stamped classified. If Voyager does arrive at its destination, whether that's a cloaked construct, a hidden civilization, or something beyond our understanding, the first to know will not be us. It will be the few, the watchers, the gatekeepers. And by the time they decide what to reveal, history may already have changed. Perhaps we'll wake one morning to silence the signal gone forever, written off as another technical failure. Or perhaps we'll wake to headlines announcing a discovery so monumental it rewrites everything we thought we knew about the universe. Until then, Voyager keeps moving our little ghost ship, carrying Earth's heartbeat deeper into the unknown. And maybe that's the most haunting part. Because right now, as you watch this, Voyager is out there, still transmitting, still traveling, still being watched. So I'll leave you with this thought. When the next signal arrives, when the next anomaly flickers across a screen in some control room, will it be the echo of a dying machine, or the first deliberate reply humanity has ever received? If this mystery pulled you in, don't let it drift away like Voyager. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell, because we're only just scratching the surface of the unknown. Drop your theories in the comments. Do you believe Voyager is being guided, or is it all just coincidence? And share this video with someone who loves mysteries, because the more minds we have exploring, the closer we get to the truth. Remember, the universe is watching, and maybe, just maybe, listening.